Hi, everyone, and welcome to our reviewing recruit information for Division III compliance administrators this afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining us today. My name is Daniel Scotto, and I'm the coordinator of communications for the NCAA Eligibility Center. Joining me today will be Erica Klages, who's the assistant director of amateurism review for the NCAA Eligibility Center. Just a couple of housekeeper reminders for everyone. Your mics are off and your cameras are off, but we do want to hear from you today. So please use the question and answer function at the top of your screen and leave your email there too if we can't get to your questions today. Just as a reminder, everyone that is in attendance and registered for this webinar will receive a PDF and a recording of the webinar. So getting into our agenda for today, I'll be going through kind of what the Eligibility Center is and who we are, going through some definitions that everyone should know, and I'm going to pass it to Erica, who's going to go through Division III, talking about activating PSAs and monitoring those PSAs' progress, including things like updating their sponsored sports and some proactive actions that we suggest to do. And then finally, at the end, we'll get to some questions with the time that we have remaining. So just as a reminder, this webinar is the next step in the series of presentations that we have for Division III schools. We're building off of our region rules presentation that we already had, and then our last presentation that we had in July. If you need a refresher on these will be clickable links as PDFs once we provide that PDF of this presentation that's coming in the following days, and that will also be posted on the Eligibility Center membership portal. So who is the Eligibility Center, what we are, just as a reminder before we get started here. We are a unit within the NCAA that's responsible for evaluating and certifying those college-bound student athletes to compete at the Division I, II, and III level. We kind of refer to ourselves as the front porch of the NCAA, meaning that you have to go through us first. The students have to go through us first before they get to their field or their court to participate in the sport at whatever division they decide or they get recruited to do. All right, so just before we get started here, just a few definition acronyms that you'll hear most commonly used by us. So first off, the PSA one is a prospective student athlete, also known as the recruit or the college-bound student athlete. And then the IRL is the institutional request list. So this is the NCAA Division III member schools list of recruits. So once they add a student to their list of their IRL, it will notify us, the Eligibility Center, and it will tell us that they need that amateurism only certification account that is needed for them to compete. And then finally, the two types of certifications. There's the academic and amateurism certification or the amateurism only certification. So the membership portal, this is kind of the one-stop shop for everyone. If you haven't already learned about this in the previous ones, this is something that you'll need to make sure you make note of, that this is the place where you can get information, things like the policies and procedures, tutorials, presentations, and forms. You'll see there on the screen, if you can click on the resources tab when you get in there, it's going to have things like this presentation coming in the following days. So highly recommend you getting used to using that membership portal. And so now at this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Erica, who's going to get into Division III and by the numbers.
Hi there, thank you, Daniel. As Daniel said, my name is Erica Klages. I am Assistant Director of Amateurism Review in the Eligibility Center. Today, I am going to briefly talk about where we are as far as numbers of certifications and numbers of Division III institutions with active EC accounts. And then we're going to dig in a little bit more deeply in how you can effectively use the membership portal to help get your prospective student athletes through the certification process and onto the field or court, track, swimming pool, etc. We would love to hear from you, as Daniel said earlier, so please put your questions in the chat and we will get to those as we're able. In Division III, we have currently 51 Division III institutions with EC accounts, access to the EC account. That is roughly 12% of all Division III institutions. We would like to encourage the other 88% to get access. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get access, but more this time around for how to how to actually use the membership portal. Conversely, we also have 1,805 prospective student athletes with amateurism only certification accounts. Of those, though, we have 3 PSAs with Division III IRLs. So those 3 PSAs are the only PSAs who we would be looking at for Division III currently, as we only review PSAs with active IRLs. So again, I want to encourage you to, as you begin recruiting PSAs, add them to your IRL, and we will talk about how to do that here in just a moment. All right, we're going to be talking now about how to use the portal to accomplish getting your international PSA certifications. If you have access to the portal right now, I'd love it if you would log in and follow along with me, but we'll jump right in. As a review, for those of you who attended the July webinar, this is a very high-level overview of what the Eligibility Center amateurism process looks like. We start with the Division III member institution gaining access to the membership portal through the Eligibility Center app in My Apps. At the same time or beforehand, afterwards, whatever, the PSA would register with an amateurism only certification account in eligibilitycenter.org. If they already have an academic and amateurism certification account type, we can work with that. So they do not need to register for a second account if they already have a certification account. Once the PSA has a certification account, the Division III school adds them to their IRL via the membership portal. And then the PSA will request a final amateurism certification. The PSA will not get a certification decision until they have requested a final one. But at that time, the Eligibility Center would process the certification review, and both the PSA and the D3 institution would be notified of a final decision. Now, we are not very close to being able to issue final decisions, so I'm not going to dig too deeply into this. I will tell you that there is a webinar coming in March 23 when we are going to dig much more deeply into what these mean and what needs to happen after we have a final decision at the institutional level for the PSA to be eligible. So keep an eye out for that future webinar, but in the meantime, these are the decisions that you can expect to see when it comes time. So we'll start with the pending review. Pending review just means that we don't have the information, don't have everything we need to issue a final decision, or maybe we've gotten everything in and just haven't had the chance to actually do that final review on it. So a pending review status is going to be anybody who does not have a final decision. There's also final certified. This prospective student athlete is ready to step on the court the minute that decision flips to final certified. They do not have any conditions or withholdings. They're ready to go. A lot of times, we'll talk about urgence later, but a prospective student athlete who gets a decision at 5 o'clock and has a game at 5:30 would be able to compete in that game later that day. A final certified with conditions is a PSA who has a delayed enrollment penalty. This would include loss of 1 or more seasons of competition and an academic year in residence. And then we have a final not certified decision. This is a prospective student athlete has a bylaw 12 violation. So this would be prize money above expenses, competition on a professional team, those type of bylaw violations. These prospective student athletes are going to require student athlete reinstatement in RSRO before they get their final conditions, which would tell us if they have a withholding penalty, they have to sit out games, year in residence, or possibly any sort of repayment. We will, again, talk about student athlete reinstatement much more in that March webinar. So stay tuned, but then we do have a not applicable decision. Where possible, we like to give decisions for all divisions, Division 1, 2, and 3. If you get into an account and a PSA has a not applicable decision, it just means that there was something that needed more review. So we only issued a decision for the division they had an active IRL for at the time. When you put the PSA on a Division 3 IRL, that should put them back to that pending review status. And so it tells us that they need a decision for that division as well. Okay, so your school's EC account enables you to have access to critical information for your international recruits. Once you are in the portal, there are 4 main things you're going to want to learn. And so we're going to touch on each, but that starts with activating our student athletes to IRL, monitoring those PSAs who are on IRLs, updating your sports sponsored list, and then accessing resources and information and support. So before you get access to the portal, you have to have an established Eligibility Center account. If you have an established EC account and you have access to the EC app, it's going to appear as a tile in My Apps. If you do not have a tile, you would want to contact your NCAA applications administrator to see about getting access to that. So your applications administrator can add your name to a list of staff, so the Eligibility Center's contact list. These individuals are the people that are going to interact with the Eligibility Center the most, or really at all. The Eligibility Center staff is only going to be able to share student-specific information with people on that list. However, there are levels of access that are established by the applications administrator. So if you think you need a higher level of access than what you currently have or what you're originally granted, I would contact your applications administrator and see if there's something that they can do to get you to a different level of access. So a quick knowledge check here. If your NCAA applications do not include the EC tile, what is your correct process? I'm sure you all got this one right. You would request access from your school's NCAA applications administrator to get the EC tile in your My Apps. Okay, so again, once you have access to your membership portal, we're going to start by talking about activating students on an active IRL. To do so, you would choose the IRL tab at the top of the membership portal and choose the IRL activation option in the dropdown. So your IRL, institutional request list, is the school's list telling the Eligibility Center that that prospective student athlete needs an amateurism decision. These are the kids that you are recruiting. As early as you begin recruiting, I would recommend adding them to your IRL. This is the first step towards getting an amateurism certification by the Eligibility Center. The student does have to have an active certification account. So again, either an amateurism only or an academic and amateurism certification account. But once they have one of those, you would be able to search their information, their ID number, their name, their country. You would use that to identify the prospective student athlete in the membership portal. Once you have found the PSA, you would check the box next to their ID number and click the activate button. The activate, deactivate button toggle, depending on the PSA status on the IRL. When they're on IRL, you would then see the deactivate button. So the deactivation process is going to be the same as the activation process, but you're already going to have their NCAA ID, and you can also search from the list of active IRLs in your institution. So you could search by sport and find a list of anybody on that sports IRL. So what do we do if you can't find the student athlete? Either the student athlete does not have an eligibility center account, and so at that point you would want to have them register again, amateurism only certification account if they are creating a new account, or more often than not, the PSA has a free profile page account, so they may still be able to give you an ID number, but because it's a profile page, it's not going to be visible in the membership portal. You would want to have those prospective student athletes transition their account from the profile page to an amateurism only certification account. Again, there's a $70 fee for amateurism only. And then last but not least, it could be just an input error. So try searching by something else, by the sport, by the NCAA ID number, check your spelling, make sure you didn't leave out a number in the ID. Those are typically going to be the reasons why we are not able to find a prospective student athlete. However, occasionally we still can't find them after all of that. If that does happen, you can use the Contact Us tab, and that would send a message to the EC's customer service team, and we provide assistance. This is not going to be an immediate thing. While we can regularly get to these messages pretty quickly, we can sometimes take up to 3 days to get back to you. So this, if you wanted something a little bit more urgently, I would suggest calling into the customer service call-in center. So next, we are going to focus on the monitoring of current IRL, PSAs who are currently on an IRL. So here, we're going to start with the Reports tab. So again, once your PSA is on an IRL, you'll go to the Reports tab and click Search Student Details. So this report offers another option, or a number of options for searching for a student athlete who is already on your IRL. You can search by their demographics, you can search by their sport, or I want to point out the option for searching by specific student details. So here you can break this down by PSAs who have requested final amateurism, yes or no. It would be very helpful if come late July, you want to make sure that everybody coming in the fall is ready to go. If your prospective student athlete has not yet requested final amateurism at that time, I would recommend it's time to give them a nudge to do so. We also have the option, I'm going to mention transcripts here a few times throughout this presentation, and I will note, I know that we are not doing academic certifications for these international prospective student athletes. However, we do have to use transcripts and academic documents to determine high school grad dates for delayed enrollment purposes. So high school transcripts, academic documents are still relevant for the amateurism certification. So you can break this down by received all high school transcripts. Again, yes or no. and then signed NLI. This would be, relevant for Division I and Division II, but this would also let you know if that PSA has committed to another institution, and you would be able to remove them from your IRL. So I want to make sure that I point out that there is a search option, or in the search option, you would want to make sure that you're searching for the correct recruitment cycle. So the recruitment cycle is the year when the PSA is planning to enroll. So our first recruiting cycle is the 23-24, so academic year 2023 and 2024. So you would want to make sure if you're not finding the PSA, especially one who's already on your IRL, make sure that we're looking at the correct recruiting cycle so that you're finding the information that you're looking for. So once you have identified, you have a prospective student athlete on your IRL, you are going to see a view that looks something like this. You've got PSA's ID number and their name. You are going to see Division I and Division II, and I'll be honest, this view that you're seeing right here, it does not have Division III in it yet, but that is only because we haven't released the view for Division III amateurism yet. But what we're going to see, you've got Amateurism Certification Division I, Amateurism Certification Division II. There is going to be one that says Amateurism Certification Division III right next to both of those. You'll see here we talked about the final decisions. This PSA is final certified for Division I and Division II. This is where you're going to see what the final decision is or what their status is. It could still say pending review if we're in that status. So here's where you get a brief, broad overview of the prospective student athlete on your IRL, what their status is. And to see more information, you would want to click on the button next to the ID number and click Get PSA Details. So this is an area where you would be able to see pretty much any documents in the account that are visible to an institution. So that would be things like transcripts. You would be able to see further information on the amateurism status, but you would also be able to see, when we do an amateurism certification, we will do research along with it. The research would be visible to see. There may be incoming emails from the PSA, from third-party sources. Those would be visible for you. So you'd be able to get more detail and be able to hopefully help give you an idea how we came to a decision we did based on any number of research documents, incoming emails, etc. So you can also follow students you want to keep track of. So this would give you kind of more real-time updates on any specific PSA. So this avoids you having to go in and search for those students every time you're checking for updates. So to track a student, you would, again, click the button next to the ID number and click the Track Student option. Selected students will turn green, so you'll see the green line up at the top. And if you no longer need to track them, you can go in and click Untrack in the exact same method you used to track them. There is also an option to monitor all student athletes on your school's IRL. So rather than looking for an individual, you would track or monitor everybody through reports. So for this, you would go back to the report tab and choose additional reports. There are going to be 3 options for reports that would be relevant for the Division III level. So the open task report action required is going to show you anything that is required for the institution itself. to do. So this would be things like there's an open task requiring a response from the institution. So you would email your information to the Eligibility Center. There's also things like matriculation letters. So we need you to confirm when the PSA's date of first full-time enrollment. So those type of tasks that need you to do something on campus are going to be in that report. There's also the open tasks report all. This is going to be a report that tells you every single open task for every single PSA. Anybody who has an open task would show up in this, even if it's not something you directly can respond to. This would be helpful though, if you see that there's something that the PSA has to send in, or even a third party has to send in, you would be able to prompt whoever it is, more likely than not, the PSA or the coach, that this information needs to be sent in. Please have the PSA deal with it accordingly. And then there's the student email report was something that was asked for very specifically from Division I and Division II. It is simply a report full of everybody's email addresses for everyone you have on IRL. So for each of these reports, you could download them as Excel or PDF files. Once you've chosen the report, you would hit Get Reports and then export as appropriate. This would be a great way for you to share information with your coaches. You could download an entire team's worth of tasks, or a report for a team, share it with that coach, and again, nudge them to get the information that we are asking for. So next, we are going to talk about how to update your your sponsored sports list. So here you're going to go back to your IRL tab, and in there hit the Update Sports option. And your school's currently selected sports are going to appear on the left, and then everything else is going to be on the right side. To deactivate a sport that you currently have active, you would just hit the deactivate button next to that sport. To add a new sport, again, hit the add sport button on the column on the right-hand side. This is going to be really important, especially in the beginning as we start, as we get the other 88% of you into active Eligibility Center accounts and into the portal. You're gonna have to activate and tell us what sports you even have. So this area is something that as soon as you get access into the Eligibility Center app, you're going to want to go in and make sure we have a complete list of all of your sports, rather than waiting for an international prospective student athlete in that sport to activate the sport. And I do want to put this disclaimer out here. The NCAA neither monitors nor audits sport lists as sponsored by your institution. So it is the responsibility of the Division III school to maintain an updated list. So a best practice that we recommend is to review your list annually. And the last thing that we're going to talk about in the membership portal are our resources and information and how to get support. So again, we use the resources tab. And then from there, we're going to go to resource links. So there are a variety of instructional and educational materials to be found in the resource links area. This also includes links to the latest educational opportunities like today's webinar that are offered by the Eligibility Center. So I want to note the international section. I would recommend that you take some time to review these resources to familiarize yourself with the content and where to find it. Again, I know we do not do international academic certifications, but again, we review academic documents to determine high school graduation dates. So some of the information in there may be more relevant than you think. I do want to point out also the amateurism area. So here is where you are going to find things like policies and procedures, reconsideration options. So you think that the amateurism decision is incorrect for one reason or another, how you would go about doing that. We also have information about our urgent requests. So again, you've got a prospective student athlete who needs a decision ASAP. You could go to this area in the membership portal to find information on how to submit an urgent request. So these resources are updated at least annually. You'll want to check back here for the most updated version. As noted at the start of this presentation, the recording and PDF of today's presentation is going to be posted here in the days following the webinar, as well as sent to everyone who registered and in the Division III newsletter later this month. The second item of note in the resources tab is the view or update contacts option. This is where you would update the institution's contact list. This was discussed at length in the July webinar. So I would highly recommend referring back to that webinar if you have any questions about this, but the next slide has a link to directly to that webinar, but I believe we could also put that in the chat as well. So last in the resources tab is the upload documents section. This would be, again, a lot of the things that we request from you can be uploaded. So things like matriculation letters, again, you telling us the date of first initial full-time enrollment, transcripts if you provide them as well, and then also those reconsideration options for determining if there's a new, if the decision needs to be changed or not. Can we go back one slide? I want to talk just a little bit more about this. So again, the upload document area, this is where we provide you the opportunity to upload those documents that the recruit may need. So just to talk about this a little bit more deeply, the first thing you would do is in the search criteria, find the PSA's account. Once you've found their account, you'll have the opportunity to upload the document directly into the account. I want to mention the academic records submission form. If you are submitting transcripts, you'll want to include that along with the transcripts, and then documents that are uploaded via the membership portal, the upload document feature, are attached to the account immediately. So that is going to expedite your review process. Now here, it is a best practice to contact the EC's customer service team by using the Contact Us option. When we click on the Contact Us tab, the screen pops up after entering your comments. Click Submit Request. One of the best practices is to, for any correspondence with the Eligibility Center, is to include the PSA's student ID number as available, so that would expedite any response that you get back to us. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this can require up to 3 business days for our team to respond, though we are often able to get to them much faster. Again, please do not hesitate to contact our customer service staff. We are here to provide assistance. They are fantastic subject matter experts and really strive to make this process as smooth as possible. Okay, so one other item of another resource that we would highly recommend that you use as we embark into the 23-24 certification cycle is the Division III Amateurism Flyer. This is a student-friendly PDF. You can print it out to hand it, or your coaches could send this out to anybody they are recruiting. I would recommend sharing this with recruits and their families, just for a greater understanding of what the Division III amateurism requirements are and what is going to be required of them as they go through this process. All right, and we have a ton of resources in the portal, but we've also got this QR code for the D3 flyer. I would highly recommend, again, dig through the documents in the membership portal. Use this link here to subscribe to the Division III membership newsletter. Those are monthly, and they will go out with new updates, some tips and tricks, getting us ready for April 1. There are downloadable resources for the guide for the NCAA compliance administrator, guide for the college-bound student athlete, again, that Division III amateurism flyer, and then a membership quick start guide, membership portal quick start guide. That would be a great place for information on how to get through the membership portal if you have any questions after this webinar. So at this time, I believe I'm going to hand it over to Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. So some proactive actions for the Division III members. So how can you help those Division III members? You can spread the message. You can be a resource for those Division III recruits. A big thing that Erica touched upon, the resources, is that Division III amateurism flyer. That's an important piece. Accessing that membership portal and using those resources, as well as signing up to receive the Eligibility Center's D3 newsletter. That's usually a monthly newsletter that comes out with key information, and then participating in webinars just like this one, and finally attending the convention session that will be taking place on January 12th. All right, so now going to get into some questions that we got throughout the chat. I'm going to ask Erica these questions. So our first question for you, Erica, is could you please review the fee for the international student registration, and also will the Eligibility Center be offering a fee waiver option?
Great, thank you, Daniel. Yes, so the amateurism only certification account fee is $70. There is a fee waiver option, so the international student can select fee waiver during the account registration rather than paying the fee up front. Once they've selected that, a task would assign to their account within 24 to 48 hours. That would tell the student what they need to do to finalize that process to get their account activated.
Right. Thank you for that. So our next question here is, should our institution's application administrator grant EC Portal app access to all of our coaches on campus?
Yeah, so granting access to the EC Portal app would be at the discretion of the app administrator. Granting access, but not assigning the specific coaching staff member with a role would be, or could potentially be, a great place to start with your coaches who do recruit international students.
All right, thank you. Next question here is, how often is it recommended that our Division III member school contacts log into the EC portal to track on the international students' account progress?
Sure. So because the EC portal offers such a big variety of tools, so IRL activations, open task reports, track PSA features, you may find yourself logging in pretty regularly, hopefully. Best practice is really going to depend heavily on when you're recruiting. So if you're in season and you're doing less recruiting, you may find yourself logging in a little less than maybe during the summer or during the off season. So the more recruiting activity, the more you'll need to log in and keep track on the PSAs you've got on IRL and the PSAs that you are recruiting.
Thanks. Before we get into one of our last couple questions we have, I just want to point to the screen. If you want to take your phone out and you want to scan this QR code, this will take you to our previous webinar on how to use the membership portal. If you haven't had a chance to go through that and you weren't in attendance for that, or you just need to catch up on that, you can scan that QR code, and I also believe it will be dropped into the chat. But just a reminder too, you will be getting the PDF of this presentation as well, and it will have the link to that presentation. So I think we're just going to do one more question here for you, Erica, and that question is, what is the earliest that a fall 2023 international enrollee can register with the EC?
Well, that date is today. As quickly as we can get them registered, we're ready for them. So international students interested in attending and competing at a Division III institution in 23-24, I would recommend that they create their amateurism only certification accounts. Yeah, now. I do want to note it's possible that they already have their academic and amateurism certification account, so please don't have them register for a second one. If they have a current account ready, we can use whatever they've got, as long as it is at least a certification account. But if they don't have anything, direct them to amateurism only certification account.